Todd Michael Hall. The musical side, the business side, the international adventurer side, the family man, and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you going through the rigmarole of hooking up the phone and the camera and the Wi-Fi and all that stuff to talk today. How are you?
Very good, man. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I was my Wi-Fi does not want to cooperate with me, so it's like I start a Zoom meeting and then it'll stop and then start up again later and everything. So it doesn't always work so well. But so I'm on the cell phone, so we'll see if this lasts.
We will hope that it does. Life has been pretty hectic in your world the last few months, both from a recording standpoint and competition, and then having to keep secrets and all those things because of being a contestant on a show that's already recorded. And that, so let me just kind of go back for a bit here. We'll get to the voice eventually. I'd like to introduce Todd Michael Hall and his musical passion first. You've been traveling the world performing for a number of years. Set the scene for us.
Well, I mean, really, I've been involved with music since I was very young. Since I was like 15 years old, I first sang out in a band, and that was like really 35 years ago now. My older brother was always into bands, and they used to practice in our basement. I remember being a younger kid and going down there listening along. And then, I don't know, when I was 15 years old, one time, apparently I was getting old enough, and he was maybe desperate enough because he needed a singer. So I actually performed with them a few times at like local bars. I think it was the Alma and Brewery, and the brewery in Elma, and one was the Rainbow Inn in Parrington and stuff like that. So, and I was only like 15 years old, and I probably looked 13 because I was I was a late bloomer, you know. And but in any event, so you know, I did perform in a band. We did originals. We would play in the Detroit scene down, you know, in the late 80s and really into the early 90s. And when I got out of college in 91, I was still doing the music thing. And what ended up happening is, you know, the music landscape changed a lot. So in 1996, I got out of music for a while. I was just focused on work. I'd been working at Glass Tender full time since I got out of college in 91, and I got real busy with that and everything. And so and then eventually I got married in 99, and I really just took a break from music till about 2004, I guess, is when I started getting into it again. And so what happened is, you know, I got in one band that led to another band that led to another band. So finally, about 2013, I got into a band called Riot. And Riot has been around since like 1977. So I've done 2 albums with them now, and they were like the 15th and 16th albums. And so because they've been around for a while, they've had some good albums, but they never got like huge, if you know what I mean. So, but they do have a lot of followers around the world, and the style of music that they play, heavy metal, is still pretty popular in Europe and in South America, in Japan, stuff like that. So we do get to play some shows there. I usually get to play some shows, and maybe sometimes as much as 6 or even 8 weeks a year worth of shows in other parts of the world. Like I've been to Japan 7 times now with the band since 2014, I think. And so it's been pretty crazy. The funny thing for me is to have it be something that I wanted to do so long ago, and then to now be, you know, I was in my 40s when it started really clicking for me and stuff, that I got to play these shows. It felt kind of unusual, you know, that it would take that long to happen. But part of me says I feel like God made it happen for me at a time when I could handle it and I could really truly appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Well, when did you know that you had a talent vocally?
Well, I mean, really, that story dates back a long time ago. My mom told me that when I was in kindergarten, that the teacher that I had at the time told my mom, like, "Hey, you should get him piano lessons or something, because he's really on pitch when he sings. You know, he can stay in key really well. You know, which is, I guess, sometimes a struggle for little kids. But and so so somebody told my mom that. I don't know if I remember her telling me that, but I just remember when we were, you know." What's funny is my mom's not a musician, but she loves music. My dad is more, you know, whatever, music's in the background. It's not really like his thing. But I remember as a youngster, you know, when we would, you know, because everybody in Michigan goes up north, you know, or whatever. And my mom is from Mackinac City. And so I remember when we were younger, when we would drive up to go see her mom up in Mackinac City, we had this Cadillac with the fake red leather interior, and it had the 8-track player in it. And I remember the 8-track tapes, and we had a variety of music. I remember we had like Tom T. Hall Hall. We had Bread, the best, which I thought it was the best of Bread, but that was the name of the album. And so I thought the band was called Best of Bread, but we had like Deep Purple and I think some Rolling Stones and all sorts of stuff. We just had an incredible variety of music. And so I just remember always singing along to music and stuff like that. And when I was younger in school, I did academic track meets at like St. Helen and then at St. Stephen. And so it's really, I don't know, I've just been singing forever, really.
There's a lot to unpack in that rapid fire version of your story. So we go back, first of all, I didn't know anybody was actually from Mackinac City. It seems like everybody travels to Mackinac City. So you've got this I-75 adventure of family memories, and it sounds like permission to play music that a lot of parents would have said, turn that down. And instead you were cranking it up.
Well, the funny part is, I mean, I was young. I mean, like, that's what blows my mind, because I remember having this Deep Purple album, and I can't even remember which one it was, but it had Smoke on the Water on it. And I remember jamming that with my mom. And I don't know, like, my brother John wasn't that old when he had it, so I don't think it was like my oldest brother forced it to happen, but maybe. I just think, I think my mom, she's always just been into music and rock. I know she had like 4 kids in 4 years, the 4 oldest kids. And she said that, she kind of never really got into the Beatles because there was that time in the 60s where she was from like 65 to 69, 70. She was busy having babies, she said. So she really missed out on some music. So she sometimes jokes and says, well, I missed out on the Beatles because I was too busy having kids. But other than that, she's always been passionate about music. And, so I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, you'd think so. Actually, the funny part is that when we were younger, we would, my brother John would practice in the basement. And then obviously when I was in the band, we would too. And a lot of people would say, man, I can't believe your mom put up with you guys making all that loud racket in the basement. But the funny part is we actually ended up kind of turning her into a big heavy metal fan. So she obviously likes a lot of different types of music, but she really likes heavy metal music too. So it's kind of funny, a little unpredictable for a mom.
That is a little bit unpredictable. I'm trying to picture my mom in that setting, and I think Sinatra was a little bit much for her. So you guys, you were truly blessed with that level of support. And as you're starting to develop your chops and get the voice going in the direction that you wanted it to go, did you ever have to overcome nervousness or fear of crowds and I was talking with someone about this earlier today, that surveys indicate that most adults have at the top of their list the fear of public speaking or public presentation. I've just never felt that. I think I've been gifted to somehow not be nervous when I speak to people in groups. How about you? Was your journey ever a nervous one?
I think for me, what it really comes down to is if you're comfortable with the topic at hand. When it comes to speaking, like if somebody asked me to speak on brain surgery, I probably wouldn't talk about bar design or appearing on The Voice or whatever, then obviously I'm comfortable with that. And I think with music, it can be similar. Like a lot of people will tell me, oh, you should do karaoke. But the thing is, I like to feel prepared. And so I wouldn't want to do karaoke if it was just like, hey, try this song and you've never tried it before. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. You know what I mean? More because I just, I don't want to look foolish, like I'm unprepared. But no, in general, I guess I don't remember ever having a lot of fear over that. I get some amount of, butterflies in the stomach, and especially for some shows. But it just depends. Like with my band Riot, we've played so many shows together that I just have this real comfort level with them and what we do. So it's just almost just like pure fun. I think the only difference there is every now and then we'll play a big show. And if there's 10,000 people out there, sometimes you can feel like you're getting a little amped up. And then that can be a problem. If you get out there and you run around on stage too much, you start to lose your breath, and then it's hard to sing,
You're playing to these big crowds in many cases on the other side of the world. I know that you've done a lot of international traveling and performing, and I've always been curious about this. When American groups go to foreign countries and sing your songs, it's not like you're suddenly translating them into the native language of the audience. How does this work? Are they all singing along with the lyrics in English?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know about all of them. I think, there's people, they know the song so well that maybe they're just learning them phonetically or whatever, because a lot of times they will sing along with parts of the song, or I think what you'll find in other countries, people are much more capable of speaking foreign languages than we are. Americans tend to be very English centric or whatever. I mean, unless of course you speak Spanish. You know, there's a lot of that in the U.S. But in general, I think it's a fairly, I hate to make broad brushstrokes, but I think it's fairly safe to say that in general, Americans tend to learn that one language, English, and that's it, you know. But when I go over there, like a lot of times the fans will have trouble, you know, if they want to talk to you afterwards, they might have trouble talking to you. So not everybody's speaking English, but I think, you know, when it comes to, that's one of the, I think the exports of America is we kind of export our music. Because the funny thing is, if you look at it, a lot of the German bands and some of these other bands, they will sing in English too. It's almost like English became kind of the universal language for that. And you don't always see it, you know, like if you look at like some of those K-pop bands and stuff that came over, the Korean pop bands, some of them would sing in a mixture of Korean and English. So it's maybe changing more nowadays, but I think for the longest part, and especially in the heavy metal category, I am in, like English is like the official language. But it did blow my mind a little bit. Like it was just, man, it was maybe 3 years ago or so now, but we played some shows in South America, and not all of our shows are big. You know, sometimes we're playing little clubs, and if it's a Tuesday night, you know, we might only have 50 to 100 people there. But I mean, in general, there's usually at least 200 to 300 people. And I remember being in Colombia, and they took us to this tiny little place, and like we were on a stage, it wasn't so big, and the people were like wrapped, like right, like the front part of the stage where I was supposed to stand was like this little thing that stuck out, and like literally people were surrounding me. And I remember being fascinated, and it was interesting because above my head was like a balcony that where I would look up, and there was people above me peering down, and there was people all around me, but it was only about 300 people all together. But it was really interesting because we would sing songs, and they would be singing along with them. And Riot has some old classic songs from like 1977 that people still listen to and like. But they were even singing along with like the newer songs from our latest album that I had written the lyrics to, you know. So I was like, wow. So that kind of blows your mind when you write a song and then you're in a foreign country and people are singing your lyrics back to you, and they're singing it in English when that's not even their first language.
I think anybody who's been to a concert in America is aware of the magic of the lanyard, right? That's what you want, because that's probably going to get you to some special restricted area. Maybe it's backstage, maybe it's just up closer to the stage, but those are in place, generally speaking, because of security for the band and the band members, because you just never know. There's enough crazy groupies out there. Have you ever had any adventures on these overseas trips where, oh yeah, you had to remind yourself that security isn't quite the same over here as it is back home?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, actually that show I was just talking about in South America, I mean, you know, God love the promoter guy. I mean, but he was trying to save a buck, so he was supposed to have it at this one club that was nicer, but he got access to this other one for less money or for free or whatever have you. And this club was just not set up for live bands, so there really was no backstage. Like our backstage was like the landing area to get it was like a sitting area, landing area to get up the stairs to go to the balcony that was above us that I described. And so they couldn't block it off completely because people had to be able to get up and down that stairwell. And then for the walls that they put on, they just hung a curtain. And so it was like we had people just, you know, you're trying to get dressed and people just peek their head in and be like, hey, what's up? You know, and so, yeah. So, I mean, we've certainly run the gamut, but that's because, you know, we're not Bon Jovi or anything, you know. I mean, you're doing some smaller scale stuff. I mean, that's the funny part about Riot. We can play a show like, we played Rockfest Barcelona with Judas Priest and other big bands where we played in front of 20,000 people. And then, you know, we've played in Belgium in front of 50 people. You know what I mean? Wow. And so it's like, it just really, it can vary tremendously. So it just depends. But we're kind of more like a niche band. So usually, if anything, the security is kind of lapse, you know, and you know, usually what happens is you come back and the opener bands have raided everything. So like there's no beer in the fridge or anything, you know, whatever, you know, no food left, you know, stuff like that.
Our guest is Todd Michael Hall. You have seen him on The Voice, and if you happen to live in the mid-Michigan area, you've probably seen him around town because he and his family are part of a family business as well that's been considerably impacted throughout this pandemic, like every aspect of life has been. And so as we kind of turn our attention to your recent experience on national television with The Voice, I'm curious about the balancing of all of that commitment with the family business, right? First of all, fill everybody in, if you would, on what Glass Tender does. And then we'll talk about kind of that struggle to balance. Hey, I got to go sing for 3 minutes on national TV. Meanwhile, I can't have an HR meeting on Thursday morning at 10, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think, being at Glass Tender, we manufacture bar and restaurant equipment. A lot of people think we have something to do with glass, but my dad invented the world's first automatic rotary glass washer. And so that's why we got the name Glass Tender, to take off of the word bartender. So we're really a sheet metal fabricator more than anything. We make some refrigerators, and we make all the equipment behind the bar that most people would never pay attention to even seeing. But I think, I've being in Riot since 2013 and playing some shows out, it's kind of built up to the point where, I can go off for a couple of weeks, or, I was gone for 5 weeks in October, a little over a year ago, where I did like a tour bus tour. We did 25 cities in 30 days and stuff like that. So, I've had some bigger trips, and fortunately with today's technology and cell phones and stuff, you can get all your emails no matter where you're at. And I did take my computer just in case I had some documents I wanted to edit and some different things. But for the most part, fortunately, the way we run our company with Notebook management and everything, everybody's so engaged, and I don't do the day-to-day work. I'm not doing quotes, or I'm not putting together equipment. So usually what happens when I'm gone is, my project's just going to get delayed for a little while because it's hard to push them along, but I can stay up on all the emails and everything. So I've been very blessed, with my family and all of our employees and everybody supporting the things that I do. So when it came time for The Voice, I think that sort of precedent was already there. I think the harder part with that is the secrecy. I first went there in like August, and then I had to go back in September, and that was like a 3-week trip to prepare for and then film the blind audition. And then I had to come back and be all secretive about it. And then I had to go back again in January for another 3 weeks to film the battle round and the knockout round. And so once again, I wasn't supposed to tell anybody what I was doing. And, the first trip I did, and finally for the second trip in January, I ended up telling my management team, just because obviously my family knew, but my management team, the 10 managers, I felt bad because they were asking me questions and I was sounding evasive and whatnot have you. So finally I was just like, all right, here's the deal. I can't tell anybody, but, because I just, I didn't want them to think I was just being irresponsible or whatever, So that was
running off for another vacation somewhere, and here he goes again.
Well, they're like, where are you going? And what are you doing? And like, I'm like, I'm doing some recording, and whatnot have you. And it just, just sounded fishy. And then most people that know me, a lot of times they're connected to me. So they see on Facebook that there's no shows. So I can't lie and tell them I'm going to play shows because it's too easy to see I'm not, so that was tough. And then I think, obviously then I got to tell employees, people about it. And then when everything started hitting, which was February, I think, that, and actually I would say the odd thing about it is you really don't realize the social media explosion that you have when you appear on national TV like that. And I think for me, it was like almost less because like I'm older and social media is a little more of a younger person's game. Cause I know like for me, I didn't gain nearly as many followers as some of the other people did. But like for me, the night of my blind audition, I woke up the next morning and my daughter said, "Oh, you gained 1,000 Instagram followers overnight." And I was like, wow, and what's weird is, and that's the problem. I needed a new strategy because I don't want to say I'm this nice guy. That sounds horrible, but like, I don't know. I try to respond to everybody, you know what I mean? And I try to like their comments, and and it was just overwhelming. There was so much stuff. And I would get to the individual message, but like literally it would take me 3-4 days because I'm busy with other things. And so trying to keep up with everything, during this, which is funny because it's almost like, in a way, it's almost like the shutdown and closing our business for a few weeks almost came at a good time for me because I was so busy with this voice stuff that it actually was like, okay, fine, I guess I can just plow into that full on, even though I'd recorded my stuff in January, but still between the social media and then prepping for these lives, because they sent us all equipment that we had to set up in our houses and stuff to prepare for that situation. So it started to be a lot of work, and it's hard to balance that and real work at the same time. That's for sure.
back at the beginning of that journey, what was it about going on to a competition show in general that appealed to you? Why'd you try it?
I think, I mean, that was funny because I remember it's really the process started a year ago, because I received an email. I'm on like an NBC, whatever junk mail list or whatever. So I received an email. Oh, The Voice is having tryouts, and I've received them for years, and I just ignore them. And for some reason, this one came, and it said there was going to be a tryout in Chicago, an open call audition in Chicago, and I was like, well, Chicago's not so far away because a lot of times they're in New York or LA, whatever. And I thought, and then I looked at my calendar, and it was a weekend in June, like the weekend before that my girls were trying out for soccer, travel soccer. The weekend after, we were on our way to India. So it just so happened that weekend I was totally free. And I asked my older brother, Rick, what he thought about it. He told me I was stupid to even think about it. And then I asked my mom, and my mom, what do you think? And my wife, she didn't really care either way. She's like, whatever, if you want to do it next show. And then I asked my mom, and my mom's like, well, do you think you'd have fun? And I'm like, well, yeah. And she was, well, then go. You're not hurting anybody. I'm like, all right. It's always nice to ask mom. Of course, they're going to encourage you, I think for me, it was just more the curiosity of, could I do it? Would I get on the show? And also, I mean, I have my, like, Riot is heavy metal music, but I have my singer-songwriter stuff that's more pop, I guess you'd say. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get some exposure for, my solo music or whatnot have you. So I'll give it a shot. So yeah, in June, I drove to Chicago and just, I think there's a couple thousand people there that day. I know there's two groups, morning and afternoon. I know there was close to 1,000 people in my afternoon group, and you get pulled in and you go sing a cappella in a little room, and if they like you, they're like, oh, you're going to get a call back, And so then the next day you had to go to a callback at a studio, and, then they would film you so they could show you the producers and stuff. And then from there, you just had to wait to hear if you got like a call back to be able to go back and do a blind audition. It was pretty crazy. So I thought, yeah, nothing will happen, but, and then all of a sudden you get a call. I got a call in August and said, yeah, we want you to come out. And it was like, wow, really?
Well, the other, the one surprising part of it isn't that you were talented enough to get on there. Anybody who's heard you sing knows that you have that talent, but it's pretty unusual for someone at the age of 50 or up to be included in something like that, right? I mean, you look way younger, but
oh, yeah.
We've both crossed the 50 threshold. I'm a little bit ahead of you. So did you feel like you were the grandfather, the godfather to the other contestants, or did you not?
Oh, yeah.
Did they look at you kind of like, why are you here?
I think the funny thing is they were actually all pretty good about it. I mean, and maybe they said stuff behind my back. Most of them, when I told them I was 50, they were like slack-jawed, like, and then a lot of times younger kids aren't so good at guessing your age. I was definitely the oldest one to get on a team, because the next oldest one was Tanisha, who's still on, and she's 44. And I think Todd Tillman is like 40 or 41 or something like that. There was an older fellow that tried out. He is he was on the show, trying out, but he didn't turn a chair. His name was Tyrone, Mr. Super Fantastic. Really nice guy. I actually worked out in the gym at the hotel with him a couple times. Really nice guy. And he was 68 years old, actually. So I was pretty amazed. But yes, I did definitely feel like, but the contestants all treated me well, but I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time hanging out with, I guess some of the younger ones I did. It was weird. You almost felt like a dad to some of them, because they would be talking, asking advice on stuff. But other times you just felt like a fellow musician and contestant. So, I mean, but the whole time I was like, okay, I mean, like, realistically, I never thought I would win, in the sense that I know that pop is a young person's game. And so the show leans toward pop, and I'm more of a rock guy anyway. But I just thought, yeah, I'll go have some fun and see what happens. And I mean, I definitely had a wonderful experience, and I definitely got a tremendous amount of exposure. So I mean, to me, it was just really a blessing to be on the show. And one of the things about being on the show is that you end up making really good friends with these contestants too, just because, you're from different walks of life, but you got that same passion for singing and for music and songwriting and stuff. And it's amazing. You really feel like you make lifelong friends in the process. And so I really enjoyed that part of it too.
Our guest here on The Big Impact is Todd Michael Hall, having a great time learning about his passion for music, his experience on The Voice, And Todd, just a couple of moments ago, you mentioned just kind of in passing the phrase, then we were heading over to India, and then you just kind of continued on. I think it's important for us to kind of include that part of your story in this conversation because heading over to India has a very special connection to you. How did you meet your wife?
Yeah, that's actually the one thing I was a little bummed that the Voice didn't really, because they asked me a lot of questions about my story, my wife and I's pen pal story, but they didn't actually end up featuring any of it on the show, which bummed me out a little bit. Um, but yeah, my wife and I met as pen pals way back in 1993.
Actual pen and paper
Yeah,
pals.
actual pen and paper. Yeah, I had like a fan club for my band at the time that had started in like 1991, and so I would, when kids would write me, I would send little mailing list forms out to them, and then they would give them to their friends or whatever have you. And my wife, she was, she's from a part in the northeastern part of India where there's really not a whole lot of nightlife. It's very mountainous and agricultural based, and then cities. But I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. It's like they don't have McDonald's and stuff like that, and so her favorite pastime was, to have pen pals. So she had quite a few. She was, and then she's from a state called Nagaland, and the Nagas are really into Western culture. So they love, Western music, and they tend to walk around in jeans and t-shirts, which is not their native dress, obviously, but, so they've been very Westernized. And she was into like Sting and Bryan Adams, the pop stars. And so she was in some fan clubs for that, and she'd met other people. So she would write other people, just learning what life was like in other parts of the world. And so somehow she had got one of my mailing list forms from some girl in Hawaii that we both were writing to, named Trisha Hernandez. And so she mailed me the mailing list form. And the thing is, like, I wasn't really writing all these people because I was mostly just trying to build up a database for my band to try to sell albums later. And most of them were young girls. I mean, I was whatever, 20 years old to 21 or whatever at the time when I started it. And a lot of times they were 14-year-old girls, and they would ask about the weather and whatnot have you. But when she wrote, I kind of wrote to explain to her that I wasn't really looking for pen pals. Well, let's put it this way. I sent her the package on the band, and then all of a sudden she sent me a letter. It was like 3 pages, because the first time she just sent me the mailing list form. But then she wrote back, said, "Oh, let me introduce myself." And it was 3 pages, and it was a thin airmail paper and really pretty handwriting. And I found out she was a school teacher, that she was, basically the same age as me, and, that she was Christian. And I found out these interesting things, and I thought, wow, this is kind of fascinating. So I wrote to her to kind of explain to her that I wasn't really looking for pen pals, but I answered a couple questions and I asked a couple, and I don't know, it took 2 weeks for a letter to get there and 2 weeks to get. So about once a month, I ended up writing a letter, and I don't know, we wrote for like 3 years, just really as friends. We never really did write love letters. Yeah, 3 years before I went to visit her. Yeah, 3 years. And so finally, long into it, I wrote her a letter one time and said, I kind of have these feelings for you, but I don't know how to deal with it, because I've never met you in person. And I said, and she was always inviting me, we'll come visit, I'll show you around or whatever. So finally in 96, I decided to go visit. I talked my brother Rick into going with me. And actually looking back at it, I think how stupid we were, because this is 96. Like, we didn't even have a cell phone. And we didn't even book a hotel. We just booked a flight into Calcutta and told her when we were arriving and hoped she'd meet us there. So like, if she wouldn't have met us there, we would have been in a world of trouble, because we didn't have a hotel booked or nothing. And we didn't get there to like 11:30 at night. And thank God she was there. I mean, I can't believe we were that dumb, but we got through it, I guess.
I think that's what they call love is blind or something like that, where you just go.
Stupid.
And, it's funny, because we were talking just a moment ago about age. And at that time, the fact that you're literally writing letters and it's taking 2 weeks each way and all of that, obviously that's a different era in time, and yet it's not all that long ago. Today, a young person who may be a young person listening to our conversation today must be just very confused by how all of that could possibly take so long.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just talk on a Zoom call or a Skype call?
Right, just like we are. A musical question for you. On this program, we've had the privilege of visiting with just some of the great vocalists of our time. Larnell Harris, David Phelps, Diane Shore, one other Grammy winner whose name is escaping me, and I would always ask them each to share some of their warm up, or just kind of how they get the pipes ready to go, because if you're singing frequently, it can become a grind, not only schedule wise, but also physically on the vocal cords. And you, my friend, you sing up into the stratosphere in a way that I would have to think, if you're not careful, you could pop a guitar string, so to speak, up there. So do you have some secret for getting ready to go?
You know, I'm a little odd in that regard. I really don't have a big routine that I go through. With me, actually, it might sound funny, but usually when I am going to sing, I usually warm up by singing in my lower ranges, like where I'm speaking right now. But actually just talking like we're doing now, that actually warms up the voice. So like first thing in the morning, like if I just jump out of bed and you wanted me to sing, it wouldn't be a good time for me to sing because my voice not warmed up at all. But you can actually warm up your voice through talking. But you can also whip your voice out through talking too. So if you talk too much, like especially if you talk too loud, like I know when I work a trade show or something like that, it's a little loud in the room, you talk too loud, you can lose your voice in a day that way. Um, so what I find now, I do, when I went to The Voice, they had a vocal teacher there who gave me some vocal warm-ups. And one of the things I have, like with Riot, I mean, I had to play like 8 shows in a row. I had a day off and then 5 more in a row. And this is like playing 2 hours a night with stratospheric singing and being able to maintain my voice through that. I found that it did help me to warm up a little bit before I got on stage, because I wouldn't be warming up then the first song or two. You know, I'd have a little more comfort level. I think probably most people really have no concept. Like sometimes when you listen to people audition, like, because I heard people audition in person, but also when you watch a show like American Idol and you hear them audition, people sing really loud.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the reality is, if you sing that loud for like 22, 26 songs like I do, you're going to lose your voice. You can't like shout, you know? So you have to, it's almost like being able to preserve your voice in a live scenario. Cause I do a lot of recording too. And obviously when you record, you can push a little more, but you can always just take a break and rest your voice. But when you're live and I've got to sing 26 songs tonight and then 26 more tomorrow and 26 more, you know what I mean? So what I have to do, and especially in the style that I'm singing, where you use a lot of head voice and sing high, I just have to kind of get in this Zen moment where, you know, I know physically what I need to do and I don't push any harder than I need to. And then I take care of myself. I eat right and I try to get sleep. Obviously when you're on the road, sometimes that's tough. I don't drink a lot. I might have a beer after the show, but that's about it. I really am not a big drinker. And then the other thing I do is I don't talk to people after the show much. Like I will talk, but they have to either be in the back room or I'm going to talk in the ear. Like I will not go out where the loud music is playing and try to talk to people, because you'll destroy your voice doing that. So I kind of have to get in rest mode, I guess, after the show.
That makes good sense.
So that's
yeah, and I'm certainly not going to compare broadcasting to singing, but I do know that back when I would do a lot of play-by-play of games, I got some great advice once from a veteran broadcaster, and he said to me, "Remember, the mic is on. You can use it."
Yeah.
And so instead of having to just scream for a 2.5-hour, 3-hour contest, use the mic. If you want more volume, turn the mic up. You don't have to kill yourself to get it done. So.
Exactly what I'm saying. You don't want to push any harder than you need to. I mean, obviously, some of the really high notes I hit, they do come out pretty loud, but you don't want to sing everything that way. You want to do it a little effortlessly if you can.
Well, the wonderful folks at The Voice have made it difficult for me to play some of your music in this conversation. A lot of listeners might be thinking, why are we not hearing samples of this incredible range? We can't do that right now, and that's okay. That's part of the non-disclosure or whatever agreements that Todd was a part of. So just know I've thought of it, but we can't do that right now. However, if you go on,
you could always play one of their clips, I suppose.
Yeah, I play one of the Voices clips. That might be what we'll do, so people can get an idea of how you're sounding. And now that part of your world has come to an end, what's next? Is there another tour in the near future? Is it back to work? What's happening?
Yeah, well, certainly, I had never envisioned like not working at Glass Tender. So certainly that's there, and that's my main job, my main source of income and everything. I did have some nice shows, like about 3 weeks worth of shows in July booked with my band Riot, but those are out the window now because of all the those have all been postponed because of what's going on. And so, I mean, for me, obviously, work is still there, and I've got a lot of things to do because orders have gone through the floor with everything being stopped and all the bars and restaurants closed, but hopefully that'll come back soon. And I mean, outside of that, I'll just continue with music too. I mean, over the break, I did take some time to write a bunch of songs. And so I kind of, people really liked my performance of Jukebox Hero, and, and that style of rock music is kind of, kind of my bread and butter in terms of what I grew up on. And so over the break, I took the time to write a lot of songs in that kind of vein. So in the next few months, I'm going to have a solo album coming out, and I'm hoping my fantasy, I guess you would will, is that if there was enough attention from me being on the show and people like the album enough, maybe I'll be forced to actually go play some shows and put together the band to go play some shows with my solo album and stuff. So we'll see. The people, some of the people comment on Facebook, oh, you're great, I know you're off the show, but don't stop. And I'm like, oh my Lord, music is such a passion of mine that I just, I mean, when you have that itch to write and to sing and to play, it's kind of hard for it to be extinguished, by, simply, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm in a blessed spot. That's one of the nice things about me and being on the show is I was able to go there and just really enjoy it for everything it's worth, in the sense that I wasn't trying to make singing my living, and I think some of the younger people, they're at that point in their life where they're trying to decide, well, am I going to pursue music or am I going to pursue this? Is there a plan A or is there a plan B? And it's like, I already have a plan A. And so, and so I have a plan A and a plan B. You know what I mean? They're kind of both working, I guess, in a little bit, but I don't need to make money off the plan B. Thank God.
Thank you for letting us kind of peek inside the curtain of your unique world of having a company and being an aspiring vocalist. What a run. It was fun to watch on The Voice. And we didn't mention this, and we won't get into it too much now, but I first met you because of your kindness and compassion for the homeless shelter in our part of the world, the Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan. So thank you for what your heart leads you and your faith leads you to do on behalf of those who are in need as well. It's good to know that there are good people out there. We knew that, but it's kind of fun to watch good things happen to them as well. So we wish you nothing but the best moving forward.
Well, thank you very much. I love supporting you guys. You guys do a lot of great work there. So